Hi, we're live.
Oh,
Yay.
nice.
Welcome to Badass College Apps. This is a live stream that I've been thinking
It
about
hasn't shown
doing.
on YouTube yet.
Okay, it's 10 seconds delayed.
Okay.
We start over. Should I
Oh, there
start
we
now,
go.
Carly? Okay.
It's
Welcome to.
showing.
All right. All right, starting over. Cut. Start. Welcome to Badass College Apps. I'm Admissions Mom. This is a YouTube live stream idea I've had for the last few years, and I'm so excited to finally get going with it. I hope there's some of you out there who are watching, whether later or right now, and can learn to kind of handle your college admissions stress and worry in a way that will make it a little more reasonable and able to live with. So, anyway, I'm going to be sitting here chatting with Alex and wave Alex so they can see you.
Hello.
And we've got Carly here helping us out. And that's Carly. And I'm super excited to get started and talk about college admissions. So, I forgot the thing that I wanted to say. Hey, Carol, good to see you. Thanks for coming. I forgot the thing I wanted to say right in the beginning, so I'm going to go back and say it now. Badass College Apps. Welcome to Badass College Apps, where we talk about college admissions and we stop and take a breath. And then let's all do that. Carly and Alex, go with me. Let's take a breath. Okay. And that's what I needed to do. I really needed to stop and take a breath because I was nervous.
Totally.
So, yeah, cool. All right. So, Alex, tell me a little bit about you and what you do and where people can find you.
Yeah. So cool. We're just hanging out here now. So yeah, my name's Alex. Alex McNeil. I am a college consultant as well. And my sort of focus really a lot of the time is on like the written components of the application. So I work with students who are trying to express themselves through their essays. And I'm also one of the consultant moderators on applying to college, along with Admissions Mom. And yeah, so I am. How can you find me? I actually like pretty much the only social media I do is Reddit. So you can find me there. My name is McNeil Admissions. That's my username there. And otherwise, you can just find me on my website. My website is mcneeladmissions.com. I'm a little bit the words are coming. I've been talking for like literally 5 hours today, so I'm catching my breath as well. So this is a good thing for me right now. But yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm like super excited to hang out and talk.
Yeah, great. I'm so happy you're here. So I'm Admissions Mom, also Carolyn. You can find me kind of all over social media. Well, that's not true. Like I'm not on TikTok and I'm not on others, but you can find me on Reddit as Admissions Mom, and you can find me on Instagram as Admissions Mom, and you can find me on Twitter. I'm a kind of active a little bit there as Admissions Mom, and then I have a website, admissionsmom.college, not .com. And I love to talk to kids about college admissions. I love to kind of help students understand that this college admissions journey is about more than where you go to college. And Alex, I think we can talk about this a little bit more too. It's more about, to me, what I love about it is the experience that you have while you're applying to college. That way to really dig in, that time when you dig in and you get to know yourself in a way that you never have done before. And that's why I love it so much, even though I know it's so stressful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that like the application process is sort of this weird mixed blessing where like, or maybe like a cloud with a silver lining. I don't know. It depends on what metaphor you want to use. I'm more optimistic about it, but it's a time of like a lot of stress, and for some students it's really challenging. And I think at the same time, like you're going through this amazing process of like articulating who you are, what matters to you. You're discovering these like really cool communities that you know are fantasizing about what life would be like, when you kind of leave home and sort of take that first huge step into adulthood, I guess, really like going to a 4-year community or starting a community college or taking that next step in your educational journey. And I think that's what's so cool about like A2C as well, is like that process becomes a way of connecting with other people and supporting each other and kind of like venting when you need to vent. I mean, that's what brought us, together here.
Right.
So there's just so many amazing community connections from A2C and the whole process.
Right. And creating a sense of community and support system, I think, is really important. So, whether you're on A2C or you're in some other kind of community or just with your friend group in high school, just kind of having a support system is essential, or your family, whatever way that you find that support system. But, and what I wanted to talk about a little bit about today, because it's one of the more stressful aspects of college admissions. We see this on A2C and is dealing with the decisions that you do get and worrying about the decisions that you're going to get. Both of those are so hard for really for anybody as an adult, kind of having those kind of decisions to be worried about. But as a 17 or 18-year-old, especially, like when you feel like your whole future is dependent on
Mhm.
that. And Alex, what are some of your main ways that you kind of prepare your students for decisions?
Yeah. So, I was talking to a student when we were getting close to, this happened kind of around the early decision deadlines, but then also like the big hurdle, like January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, when a lot of the apps were coming due. And this student had, been pretty proactive. And so they were, agonizing over the final details of their applications, but hit submit on the last thing on like January 3rd. And they, we were talking and we were like, I was congratulating them. And they were saying that interestingly, they felt more stressed and not exactly stressed, but just kind of anxious now that everything had been turned in, because suddenly that sort of like churning process that had been occupied by like building the applications, writing essays, doing all the fun detail stuff was turned to like anticipation, right? And just like waiting and like that weird uncomfortable feeling of having like nothing to do.
Yeah,
um so that's, I think that's a really like unfamiliar space to be for a lot of students who are like so used to just like, working so hard throughout the process.
exactly. Exactly. I was actually talking to a kid on the subreddit today on A2C about that because they made a post about this feeling of emptiness. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just feeling empty. And it reminded me actually of my very first year on A2C. And there weren't many of us, so we were a really tight community. There were only 8,000 of us, which is a lot, but it was not like we have now 600,000. And so it, and I was like all wrapped up in these kids, and I was talking to them all day long, and I was reading their essays and just
Mhm.
like totally like really getting into it. And then on January 2nd, like all of a sudden I didn't have a page full of messages. And
Yeah.
I had that like let down myself. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you have this adrenaline going and you have a sense of
Yeah.
purpose, right? And then like, what do you do when
Yeah.
that sense of purpose is gone? How do you find that? And I think that's a big part of college admissions that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
It's like moving forward with that too.
Totally. And I think that that's like just really hard to balance because you get, I think so much of like the almost emotional momentum as you're applying is like you're going
Right.
up a roller coaster. You're like hopeful, you're fantasizing about these schools, you're like learning about them. And then when you submit, like you start having these like, you're like, oh God, what if they reject me? Like, what if I get rejected everywhere? Like, you get these kind of
Yeah.
anxious fantasies and kind of that momentum can really shift. And I think that was like kind of, connecting back to the first question you asked, which is like, how do you work with a student who's feeling that, or like, what do you kind of, how do you advise them then, I guess? I'd love to hear like about how you do that a little bit, because I'm sure you're really good at that.
Well, I try, but I'm going to actually show a quote. I mean, one of the comments here because I really like it.
Good.
This is from Carol. And she says, oh my, what a way to model the way mindfulness in action, which is exactly what I try to do the whole time.
Hmm.
And using mindfulness and kind of like the way I think about it is going with this process with intention. So like understanding what's happening. It doesn't mean it's going to feel good. It doesn't mean that things are going to go your way. And I'm not like a really big positivity person. That's not my thing, even though some people think it is because they get mixed up with, the ideas of mindfulness. But I'm kind of more of a realist. But mindfulness is that. It's, to me, it's like having intention about the way that you go about college admissions. I also like to think about decisions, and I kind of moved around the way that I wanted to talk about that, but all of this, but that's okay. I like to think about decisions in a way that, like, until you have that decision in hand, that first of all, you have no control over it. And so please don't like bank on it. Don't have like think
Mhm.
that, oh, I'm going to go somewhere. So I guess I'm kind of like a negative person in that way. Like until you are accepted to a college, like I don't consider that an acceptance. Like you can certainly hope for what you want. You can certainly um, I believe in doing like everything you possibly can to get the acceptance. But I don't like it when kids like try to manifest things or like, oh, I can totally do this by just like believing in it.
Right.
You can believe in yourself for sure, but you have no control over what those people on the other side of the application are doing. And so I kind of do a lot of dose of real reality, and I call it emotional planning for the
Mm.
planning for the decisions. And to me, that's what works best and makes me feel the most comfortable, like working with my private students and with students on A2C. Um,
Yeah, I connect with that because, I think that a lot of the students I work with privately, but obviously this is a really powerful part of the culture on A2C as well, is, they're focused on really elite schools. And I was just going through this thing where I was recording this advice about like how to build a school list. And the way that I come down on it now at this point is that your really elite schools, the ones that like people really desire but are also like super hard to get into,
right.
those account for like 90% of anxious feelings, I think, a lot of the time for a lot of students.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so like for me, I've kind of hit this point where there's a lot of work that goes in early on in the process to like try to help manage expectations.
Hmm.
Um, and then you have to go through that process again, I think, because people sort of emotionally forget when they hit submit and they start to kind of freak out about acceptances.
Right.
If that makes sense. But I think that's really where I've come down is like trying to really be like super explicit about um, and realistic about the actual admissions landscape for like some more selective colleges to help students get in a position where they're like emotionally braced
Yeah.
for rejection or deferral or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I love what Carol just said. I'm going to put it up here. Apply and let it go.
Yeah.
The decision, positive or negative, is what it is, and it's not an indication of your worth, as hard as that is to understand. And I think that is so hard for so many kids to understand because they've been working on this for many kids starting, in middle school, even, and certainly all through high school, of like, where I go to college is who I am.
Mm.
That bumper sticker on the back of my parents' car is what that is who I am. And that's my worth. And Carol is exactly right. It has nothing to do with your worth. In today's college admissions landscape, there are so many of you, and I'm talking to you all out there, high school juniors and seniors right now. There are so many of you who are so amazing. Like Gen Z just blows me away constantly. And, so that decision has nothing to do with you. It just has to do with numbers, I think, in so many ways. Um, and thanks, Carol. That was such a great comment.
No, completely. And that's why I think that like one of the things I see is that students will get really fixated on decisions and attached to those kind of decisions, especially when they don't start the process kind of with a really robust, like kind of almost like values clarification.
Hmm.
Because I think that like I was writing about this. I wrote about this somewhere on Reddit that there are actually so many. like liberal arts schools, private universities that have really high acceptance rates that also have higher teaching quality than many, many Ivy League schools.
Right. Oh,
And
100%.
right. So like if you're a student who is able to sort of think about that and say, hey, I really want intimate classes. I want amazing professors. I want like the teaching environment to be really top notch. And that's just kind of one example of like how you could sort of do a values clarification around like teaching and having like a great classroom experience. You might find yourself in a position where you actually don't want to go to an Ivy League school because there's a
Right.
whole other range of schools that like offer a superior education in that kind of category. And so I think there's a lot of that, like, okay, why do I really want to go to school? What do I really want to be there for? And how do I find the institution that actually like kind of delivers on that? Can save a lot of stress. And
Yeah, so that's back in creating a list, and we'll be talking about that a lot, juniors, as we move forward. And I'll have Alex back on to talk a whole lot about that with me,
yeah,
about creating a list, because it really is important as you're thinking about that. But I want to go back to like the decisions that are happening right now. So some of you seniors applied in the fall early, and you might have been deferred or rejected. If you were accepted and you're here, fantastic. Thank you for coming, even though you might be done. Um, if you were deferred, I'm going to talk about some steps about what to do if you were deferred. So I'm going to put up some slides that I've got going here. And then Alex, maybe we can just talk about them as
yeah,
they come up.
great.
So the number one thing I say is like make sure you read the instructions from the school, because every college, and I really wish colleges would streamline all of this, but they don't. So every college has a different method. Every college has something different they want. Some say don't do anything. Some say just check a box. Some don't say anything. And those are the ones I'm going to be talking about right now. So but first and foremost, read everything they sent you. Read the letter that they sent you. Read anything they have in their portal about it, and anything on their website. And what about, do you have anything to add to that, Alex?
No, I think that really covers like, you know, what to look at to decide if you need to send something and uh yeah, how to decide whether you should or should not.
Yeah, for sure. And then the next thing is, if they don't say anything at all, or they say you can send something, send something.
Hmm.
In my experience, and Alex, you can tell me about this. Like, if you don't send anything, kind of in a way, you're telling them that you're not really that interested. How do you feel about
I
that?
agree. I think that I have I've had a number of students who have gotten in off of a wait list or after being deferred who sent a letter of continued interest, but I don't think I've ever had someone admitted who didn't. So
Me
maybe
too.
that's in small sample size, but
Same, but the same for me. Like, so I encourage you, if you are interested in that college still, now you don't have to be. You could say, you know what, they deferred me. I'm not feeling it anymore. They didn't love me. Yeah, maybe I don't want to do anything, and that's cool. You don't worry about doing anything at all. But if you still like them, if you still want to, potentially go out with them, then you need to send them a letter to let them know. And
yeah. I think like something out of here is that something I learned this year, I think, or realized was that even seemingly like mm, core parts of the application process, like submitting an early decision application, are not universal. Like it's not everyone who does those things.
right,
And doing them can really differentiate you. And I think it's an even better example of that is a letter of continued interest, right? Because it is an extra step of effort. It's not really easy to write one that's like thoughtful and good.
right.
And you can be pretty sure that like I would love to see numbers on this, but like out of all the applicants who are deferred, like what percentage of them actually write a thoughtful letter of continued interest? I would guess that it's very small. Um, so I really do see this as like one of the rare moments in a super, competitive, like crammed application cycle where you could maybe be one of a relatively small group of students who's like taking that extra step to show interest.
Exactly. And part of the reason that I'm on A2C and part of the reason I'm starting this live stream is
Mhm.
because often the kids who know to do that are the
Yeah.
ones who have really good college counseling or
Yes.
parents who have experiences. And I know this is important to you, Alex, too, and a big part of why you're on A2C is I want to make that information available to every kid who wants to find it. I mean, obviously we can't go like whisper in every teenager's ear, but like if they want to find this information, I want it to be available to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the amazing. I mean, like just to talk to the merits of A2C is like I do feel like it's this way to democratize all this information, and like if you spend enough time on the platform as a student, it's hard to escape without learning the definitions of things like ED, LOCI, all these terms that are
Right.
like, wait, I may never have heard of that otherwise.
Right.
But it just kind of is so part of the language and the conversation that I think so many people probably learn about some of these like nuances of the application process that otherwise wouldn't, who are just hanging out in the subreddit.
Yeah. You say LOCI. I say Loki.
I don't know.
Is there a correct way to say
I
it?
don't know. LOCI
Okay.
sounds kind of dumb to me. I think I'm saying it wrong. I'll go with
No,
yours.
I don't know if there is a right way or a wrong way. I just like I've just always said
Yeah.
Loki. So, question for you: who do you tell your students to send this to? I just kind of like do like just splatter it everywhere because like I don't really know the unless the college says specifically, But like
What do you mean? Like, do you mean like which department at the
yeah, so I
university?
say like send it to the general admissions, send it to the general admissions
Hmm.
email address, send it to the person who signed your letter, send it to your regional counselor if there is one, and then attach a PDF so they can easily put that in there. And then if there's a portal, upload it on the portal. I mean, I'm just like
Wow,
splattershot this, but
you go all the way.
like it's because I don't really know exactly what the best place is. And I've never
Yeah,
heard an admissions counselor say, unless they specifically say, hey, upload it to your portal or, do this document or something. But, and so
I
kind of,
guess. I mean, I do a portal upload when possible, a direct email to the admissions office with like a super clearly indicated like Common App ID number,
mhm,
and
oh,
then
that's a good idea.
usually we'll CC the like the regional admissions officer or anyone that they've had a direct point of contact with.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool.
I don't know though. It's kind of, you're right. It's kind of like there's no like one proper path. It's not very streamlined,
No,
as you say.
one day everything is going to be
Mhm.
streamlined. I'm convinced it's got to be. And then the next thing that I say is
Yeah.
this in this letter, the Loki for deferral. And to me, in my mind, that's a little bit different than the wait list. I call it the wait list love
Yeah.
letter. Um, this one to me just kind of should be more short and sweet and not like for the love letter for if you're waitlisted, I like want you to get a little more engaged in it. But for this one, it's just kind of like all about the business. Like, what do you think? How much do you have your kids write?
I mean, the thing that so like when a student gets deferred, usually at that point we have a pretty good like application narrative that's been built like
Mm-hmm,
across their essays. And so like the student really comes across clearly as caring about, I don't know, like healthcare in developing nations or something like that, or
mm-hmm,
like they have a clear focus. And
mm-hmm.
usually when we're applying, I'm emphasizing that like you should try, you should go out and like try to find an extracurricular experience that sort of lines up with what you're interested in. Like get
Mm-hmm.
some experience here and try to like go a layer deeper. And part of the strategic reason to do that is because I think that like my policy on these is that it's a huge benefit if you can um, appear to be a person who has continued moving forward in your life even after you hit submit on the college application. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, definitely true for like for waitlist, but even for deferral, I think like a really succinct summary of like things you've been up to that gives the admissions office like, oh, okay, this is like a dynamic person. It's just another opportunity to um, stand out and be memorable. So I think you're right. It's much shorter and like you're not like going off about like how it's your one dream school and like you really really want to be there, but um, a really brief kind of professional update, I think,
Right.
sometimes fit in there as well, even for a deferral letter.
Yeah, and I think we need to be. I want to be careful with the word professional because I use business like, and what I found with some of the kids I talked to about it or who sent me theirs to look at, with the word business like, it suddenly they lost their voice.
Hmm.
Suddenly it became like I'm going to try to be what a businessman should sound like, and very very formal. And I read their essays and I knew what kind of a person they were and how warm and friendly and like all that. Lost that. Don't
Hmm.
do that. Just because we're saying business like or professional doesn't mean you shouldn't be yourself. Like hold on to your voice in this, you know.
Hmm.
Okay, let me see what. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think that you hold on to your voice, but you also recognize that it's almost like you're addressing admissions officers directly in a way
Yeah.
that somehow like essays, they don't feel quite as direct, right? Like you're not literally sending an essay like to your admissions officer. There's a more explicit and well understood like criteria that your essays are being evaluated in. And I think any moment where you have that kind of like direct correspondence with admissions officers, those are moments where, um, yeah, you want to like show your voice and be identifiable, and also just be respectful and like conscientious of the audience, I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
So the next thing I say, if they truly are your first choice, like hands down, if you
Hmm.
get accepted, you'll go, then tell them. Totally okay. But don't lie about it. Like, it's like you don't want to tell, 5 different schools that like you're my first choice and I'll definitely attend. If you have one that that if you get in, you'll go, it's okay to tell them. And I kind of like think of it as like, you know, let them know a little bit about what you've been doing, your updates,
Yeah.
and then still how you can fit. I encourage kids to get something somewhat recent from the college. So go read their school newspaper, go look at their social media. If you can show them that you're still engaged and how you will be engaged with something that's somewhat recent and happening, not that you just took it straight from the website. I think that's an example to let them know that like, oh, like so it takes work, it takes research, it takes learning, and sometimes what I find is when kids actually do this research, then they're like, oh, maybe I don't like them so much anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one reason I like for kids to do a lot of research. I have a lot of kids asking me right now about about their midterm grades. So like they were deferred, they're writing their LOCI, and oh no, they fucked up and they got a C
Mm.
in the first semester. What do you say to them? Should they address that in this letter, or what do you think?
Um,
Or worse, a D?
I would say I don't know. I really don't know. I guess I would say I would say my intuition is to not address it actually,
Really?
because
Okay.
like I would say that like a deferral might be um a letter of continued interest for a deferral. I think would pass through the hands of admissions officers in a way that might be slightly separate from like the evaluation of your application.
Okay.
And I would say that like it's an occasion for showing like continued demonstrated interest, and basically to say like, look, please look a layer deeper. Like, please look at my the application I put together. I did I really really put a lot of work into this. This is my best. Please take another look.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that on a I guess almost like on a psychological level, like even just using that opportunity to bring up something that has gone wrong. I, maybe that's completely off base, and you absolutely should. But for me, I don't know if I would advise a student to do that. That's a good question. I really don't know.
So if they have like a really good reason, I mean, kids right now especially have lots of great reasons. Sick family members, is a big one. Taking care of family, I've had COVID and or having to I've had or having to go get a job to help
Mhm.
support the family right now. Great reasons. So Yeah, my gut feeling was the same as yours, honestly, to have the LOCI be one thing and then an update, kind of an additional information update explaining explanation.
Right. Yeah,
And
because I think that, like, to your point, you could use a Loki to say, this semester I've had to take on additional responsibilities
yeah,
because a member of my family, da da da. Do you need to use that to then say, and as a result of this, I got a C?
yeah.
Maybe,
Well,
maybe
that's
not. I
yeah,
think you can. I don't know. That's a really good question. Who do you think
yeah.
would
It's
have
one
the
I
answer? Who would have the answer to that question? Like an admissions officer, I guess.
yeah, but every college has different. There is no one
Wait,
universal
no, there's no. Yeah,
way because it's humans. So I think it's just kind of figuring out what you feel comfortable with too as an applicant. All
I
right.
think that a lot of my recommendations, not a lot of them, but like part of my philosophy of college admissions. Um, have you ever read the book like Thinking Fast and Slow?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Let
it's
me
like
write it
this
down.
this book that I think it won like the Nobel Prize in like 2006 or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about the two ways that we process things. Like we process things immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of our gut reaction. Like that's where we have like ingrained biases and stereotypes and like just immediate reactions to things, and then we have our like deeper processing, and that's where we're actually like intellectually processing something. And I think that, like, for me, because college admissions is such there's so many applicants, there's so many essays that folks have to read. I imagine that a lot of admissions officers are in a position where they're whether they want to admit it or not, they're processing things with that fast brain,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're forming instantaneous reactions to what they're seeing. And I think that like really dictates like how you convey um, areas of weakness, for example, right? Like I think you always want to kind of encapsulate it in some way of showing growth or strength or something. Owning your weaknesses in a way that has like a silver lining. And that I think is the reason why I say maybe you would avoid like sharing like a bad grade unless you can figure out how to package it really well in like a legit circumstance in your life that's going on that kind of helps to balance that narrative on that like first reaction read.
I agree. And I think that's why it's so important for kids to explain their
Yeah.
circumstances. I think so many kids think that it's like asking for pity or like they won't want to know about it. And that's, in my experience, that's not true. They want to know the context of your grades, your transcript, your things that you do. They want to understand it. And if you don't explain it, there's no way they can understand.
Yeah.
So don't think that, oh no, I made a C because I had to work to help support my family and my grandpa was sick and I was taking care of him and there's just no way I could juggle it all. And so like they're just going to like totally disregard me. That's not true. You just have to take the time to explain your situation
Mhm.
so that they can possibly understand it.
Totally
All
agree.
right. Let's look at some don'ts. Let's see. Oh, I'm still on dues. Oh, okay. So I have a lot. Okay, well, kind of covered in these.
Yeah.
Thank them again, extenuating circumstances. And again, if there's something that you need to explain that you didn't explain, I've had a lot of kids who didn't realize they could explain their circumstances before in the additional information. So you can use this as a time, or you can upload something to the portal. And then additional letters of recommendation. Some colleges will tell you right up that they'll accept them. So, go ahead and ask people, but look for people who are going to talk about a different aspect of who you are. Like, you know, like maybe a boss at this point or a leader of an activity, somebody who's going to show you are who you are in a different light. And some colleges are totally open to those and be willing to share those, and some are not. So that's going to be up to you and what you think about the college. And what do you say about letters of recommendation?
For
Alex?
me,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, if a school is like, you're really your top choice, and you feel there's someone in your network or someone who can add kind of a different view and a substantial view about who you are. I think it doesn't hurt, and
Mhm.
it might be worth it. I don't know. Like, I think letters of recommendation can be one of the like squirreliest part of the processes, or the harder ones to like really understand how they're evaluated and how much weight they're given, and then like tacking on another letter of recommendation from someone else who, you know, by definition, right, like you didn't think to ask in the first
Mm-hmm.
place, probably because they weren't like your strongest recommender. I think it can really depend, and you just need to like do that, think like, is this going to add something new to my application? Is this going
Exactly.
to help them think about me differently or not?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I'm getting to don'ts now. Nope.
Yeah.
Still got some do's. Send it in January, which I do think, and I don't think you should go much later than the first week of February. What about you?
No, I agree with that timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one thing that I've had my students do is to give an update to your interviewer.
Hmm.
More than likely, they've been supportive of you. And so if you let them know, and then they might be able to share some insight to, whatever, like, anything that they might have learned about it or what they think you might want to add, or it's just
It's a
nice
really
to
good
let them
idea.
know.
Or they might go up to bat for you too. I mean,
Yeah.
they might email the admissions office and say, "Hey, like I really enjoyed talking with this student.
Right.
Like check out their profile again." Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of let them know and thank them again for the interview and just say, I wanted
Mm.
to let you know what happened. And you're not asking for them for anything. So don't expect anything. Don't ask them for anything. You're just letting them know.
Right.
Okay. Now I think I'm finally at my don'ts. Yes. I'm at the don'ts. And I think we can go through these quickly. If they say not to send a letter, don't send one. And this is what I usually give. This is advice I give in December. But wait until you finish all your regular decision apps. More than likely, most of you have finished by now. Don't express anger or frustration. Don't blame them. Don't say, "How could you be so stupid?" Like not to accept how my amazing self. It's okay to tell them you're disappointed, but like move on.
Mm.
Don't
And
make
I
any.
think that
Go ahead.
if you talk about being disappointed, I almost would say like in the same sentence you need to say, but I'm looking forward to being evaluated in the regular
Yeah.
decision pool, or like
Yeah.
I'm optimistic or hopeful or something about my
Right.
chance.
Or grateful.
Yeah, grateful,
I'm
grateful, grateful
grateful.
to have been considered and
Yes.
deferred rather than
Exactly.
rejected. I mean, yeah.
Right. It's okay to say, while I was disappointed, understandable. I mean, if they don't understand that, but I'm so grateful that you're keeping me in the regular decision pool.
Yeah.
Don't make any assumptions about your acceptance. Don't make it too long. Don't send regular updates. I think it's okay to send another one a little bit later if you want to. And do not call and ask them for feedback on your application or ask for it in the letter. They're not going to give it to you, and it's not going to look great
Mhm.
for you. So
Definitely.
those are my little helpful hints for the letters for the deferrals and how I think you should handle deferral. In the past, up until last year, I was telling kids like, my hair is doing wonky stuff. Sorry. I was telling kids to think of deferral basically as a really polite no,
Mhm.
because generally it was. I don't necessarily agree with that right now because they're deferring and waitlisting so many kids that I feel like it's worth it to push forward if it's a school you really love. Um,
I agree. I think that this year, like last year was so scrambled because of how many, some schools over enrolled and had to ask students to, take a pass on the first year of their education. I think the numbers were just like things were really unpredictable. So I do see deferrals this year as more of a strategic tactic for like managing, for just like keeping in control of the admission cycle, I guess, by
yeah,
colleges. So I do think that it's more of a there's more wiggle room there, and a deferral this year might mean something pretty different than what it has in years previous.
right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so we've talked about defers. We've talked about, and I know you only have a few more minutes, right, Alex?
Yeah, I'm good until like for like another 10 minutes or so.
Okay,
Then I
great.
gotta jump off. Yeah.
So we've talked about how to handle deferrals, and we've talked about how to prepare for decisions coming that way, your way, I think, and we'll be talking a lot about more about that as we get closer to March and April. But What we haven't talked about too much is dealing with the decisions you've gotten, dealing with it deferral. Maybe that was super disappointing to you, or dealing with a denial, when it just didn't go your way at all, and how we can learn to kind of like handle that feeling of rejection, handle that tremendous feeling of disappointment. Because for so many kids, this is the first time
Mm,
life really hasn't gone their way. I mean, not for every kid. Believe me, I know there are some of you who've had very
yeah.
hard lives out there, but for a lot of kids, this is the first time things have really not gone the way they wanted, especially those high achieving kids. And what do you say to help them when it's flat out rejection, or they're just overwhelmed by even a deferral?
Yeah, I think like my approach, maybe this is just because of who I am, like I don't know. I think, honestly, I share a lot of like my background a little bit. Like I had a very weird winding path through um my education. Like I took a gap year, I did community college for 2 years, applied to a bunch of schools, like ended up kind of having to make a decision based on financial aid. Um and I think that throughout that process, there were a lot of moments where I realized that like the thing I was fixated on maybe wasn't the right choice for me, or in retrospect, like things turned out really well, perhaps better than they would have if I had gotten what I thought I wanted. Um, so I think like, it's definitely for the people I'm able to work with one on one, like it's really helpful to be able to share like an adult perspective on like how everyone has setbacks and like things will be okay, right? Like just emotionally, just because that's how it turns out
Hmm.
a lot of the time. And but aside from that, I do think that like um like there's some like really good ways of just dealing with a rejection, like doing more research into your safety schools. Like I have so many
Yes.
students, who are like, oh, like I've had students who have gotten denied by their quote unquote dream school, and then like kind of revisited safeties because they were sort of freaking out, and come to the conclusion that they actually want to go to one of their safeties, or like one of the other schools in their list is like, okay, there are like a ton of really good options that are still on the board. So I think like going through those motions of like having that moment of panic and then using it kind of in a productive way where you're like, okay, like what do I do now? Like what do I
Yeah.
you will find that like there's a lot of cool stuff out there. Like really, and I think this is really true, right? Like there's nothing that ultimately makes your I don't know, like this is kind of a maybe like slightly cynical thing to say, but I kind of believe this, that like school A is probably quite similar to school B. If there are two schools that you had on your list, they both have amazing research opportunities. They both have great professors. They both have like great student bodies, like good food, maybe. Like they might be in amazing cities or like wherever you want to be. If you I guess it's kind of coming back to like school list building, but chances are like you have set yourself up for a lot of success at a lot of different
Hmm.
places. And just like reminding yourself about that and looking at, where things stand and just like taking a breath and like actually trying to like grapple with that question of like, why did I want to go here so badly that I'm not now feeling crushed? And is that like a legitimate emotion? Yeah, that's not a great phrase. I don't like legitimate emotion, but kind of scrutinizing, I guess, that feeling and getting a layer deeper.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you brought up a great point of also just examining the feelings about it. And it's in mindfulness, there's a process that we use called RAIN, and it's what I start talking to the kids about, a lot about, with that understanding the feelings, is because for so many of us, like, we don't like negative feelings, so it's so major to it's so important to well, we want to squash down the feelings, right? But if you don't squash them down, they're going to like just keep coming back. So it's so important to recognize them and investigate them. And so with rain, the first word is like to recognize, like, oh, I'm having this feeling. I feel like really shitty about this, And then acknowledge is the A. So R, recognize. A, acknowledge and accept the feeling. Like, okay, like this is happening to me. I feel terrible. Like I just want to cry. And then I, is what you were talking about, investigate. Investigate, like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I feeling this way about a college admission? Why is this so important to me? And like really taking the time to dig in and think about it. And then the N is non-identify. Like it means like, that's not me. This is a feeling, but it's not me. So that feeling that you have is totally different than who you are. It is a feeling. And the really awesome thing about feelings is that they come and go. They, I kind of think of it like, and there's in mindfulness, we say like, you're the sky, everything else is the weather. So things kind of come and go. So you're going to have feelings that are really terrible and you're going to have feelings that are really good. And acknowledge and knowing, I think in the moment, like when you're feeling this terrible, terrible feeling, that it's going to go away eventually can be helpful. And you can help it go away by working through it a little bit, by exactly what you said, Alex, is like investigating it and like really thinking about it. I'm going to pop this. I really like what Carol said. Again, Carol, you're going to be the star of the show here with your comments. So she said she worked at 4 major universities. They are not all that special or that different. They are all they all have something really awesome to offer, which is what you just said, Alex. That, your experience might be different at the individual colleges, but you're going to probably have an amazing experience at any of them. And so that's kind of that. Thank you, Carol. So let's see, there we go. I'm learning how to do all this as I go. So thank you all who are here with us on our first day. Would love to hear, oh, don't worry about it, Carol. Typos are part of life in my work. Anybody else want to share any questions you might have in the chat before we kind of finish up today with a little bit of a meditation? So I don't know if we have any students out there. I know we have my family out there, which is really nice. Thank you, family, for being there with me. But any students out there who have any questions, who want to share, ask us some questions before we move on. Nope, might just be all my family. So I'll show you my family. That's my daughter. That's my son. Very supportive family. I really appreciate you all. And so on that note of like accepting whatever's happening to you, accepting that this life journey that we're on doesn't always go in the way that we think about it. And Alex, you kind of described your educational journey of like kind of going back and forth. I call it that, like a zigging and a zagging, right? Like, it's not a straight line. And sometimes life zigs when we want it to zag, and sometimes it zags when we want it to zig. But, part of the experience of life and of being a human is kind of going with that. And, maybe it's time, maybe you thought you were going to zag, but maybe it's really time to start zigging. And so, you can be thinking about that. So we're going to do like a minute, just a really short minute of like breathing and thinking about a little bit of mindfulness and a little bit of a meditation. Alex, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Carly, you want to join us?
Sure.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Okay, so let me get my little bowl here.
Ooh, you even have a bowl for this. This is great.
Yep, I need to have a way to show it so y'all can see it better. But okay, so this is going to be, it's just going to be 1 minute long. And this is an equanimity meditation. And equanimity means kind of acceptance and allowing yourself to accept things, even if it doesn't go your way, even if it kind of sucks, which is what happens sometimes in college admissions and in life. And so y'all can close your eyes if you want, or leave them open. I'll let you do what you want to do, what feels comfortable to you. But I'm just going to say some words and you repeat them after me in your head. And then at the end of the minute, I'm going to ring my bowl. And when that minute is over, and when you hear the bowl, I just want you to hold on to the noise as long as you possibly can until you can't hear it anymore. Let me put my timer on. Okay, so I'm going to ring my bell. And give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, because I'm not sure how well it'll work. All right, great. Okay, just repeat after me in your head. I am who I am. This is what it is. May I accept things as they are. May I trust in the unfolding. I am who I am. This is what it is. May I accept things as they are. May I trust in the unfolding. I am who I am. This is what it is. May I accept things as they are. May I trust in the unfolding. When you can't hear the bell anymore, you can open your eyes. Great. Thank you all so much for being here and being on our very first Badass College Apps live stream. Let's just all take a breath again. I think that's probably the most important advice I can give anybody applying to college is when you start feeling overwhelmed, just stop and take a breath. And there you can always come back to it. College admissions is not going away. Sometimes that breath needs to be longer than other times. So thank you for coming to Badass College Apps, where we talk about college admissions and we stop and take a breath. Taking a breath. And thank you, Carly, so much for helping with everything kind of behind the scenes with us. And thank you so much, Alex, for being here and talking about college admissions with me. I hope you'll come back a lot.
Yeah, you know it.
And so we can talk more. And for those of you who are here today with us live, awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching in the future, the recorded version, because I know we have a lot of international students who kind of like are part of our A2C group. So hopefully you can learn about this too and reach out. You can find me on Reddit as Admissions Mom. You can find me on Instagram as Admissions Mom. You can find Alex as McNeil Admissions, and you can find Carly all on Reddit. We're all on Reddit. You can find us all on there and applying to college. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.